From its premiere in 1978 through about the Return of the Jedi time in '83, the Kenner Star Wars toys were the toy line to beat. And Kenner executives were definitely looking at Star Wars and Star Wars futures to see how much longer the line could continue without more movies. Well, to do this, what's the next best thing to having a movie? Well, have more action figures from an older movie and give them a pack-in coin. Well, that's exactly what they did. So the final line of Kenner's vintage, retro, original line, whatever you want to call it, because these names keep being spread out like not enough butter over too much bread. The point being is Power of the Force 1, 1985, final Kenner line came with coins. There were 62 of them in total, only 35 of them were actually packed in with figures. The other ones were either variants or vehicles or even some mail-away promotions. But for the most part, they had an original front showing the character that you were getting and how this character officially looked on a coin. And they were packaged very easy to see as far as piece count right above the figure's head on the Power of the Force Star Wars packaging circa 1985. This rounded out the line to 92 or 96 when you count the droid variants, or 120 if you count Ewoks and Droids cartoon show figures. But either way, this finished up the original figures from the movie. And they went out with a bang, or at least they went out with the clang of silver coins. Well, not made of silver, they were made of metal. If you were getting a real silver coin, you'd be paying a lot more in SRP, I'll tell you that. Wow, what a tangent. But they do look great framed, and a lot of collectors have these as hugely prized items, sometimes even having the figure graded along with the graded coin for a double-graded collector feast of Star Warsian proportions. One of the coins that didn't make it out was the Luke Skywalker X-Wing pilot. Only prototypes of it made it, and it's one of the most prized possessions for those who have a complete set of all the coins, which also includes, of course, the never-released coin. And getting to display them, whether in a photo album or on your wall, is definitely a big part of being a vintage Star Wars fan, especially because it means you also have Yak Face. All right, so fast forward to modern era, and coins were used quite a few times, and by quite a few, I mean twice. So the second one was in the 30th anniversary line, where all the figures came packed with a coin either specific to them or to their movie. And of course, there were variants in both gold and silver editions of the coin, because why have a collector coin when you can double down and have two versions of a collector coin? And once again, like Power of the Force 1, the 30th anniversary line had the coins packed out prominently for piece count, so you would see the bonus you were getting. And there were even coins specific to, at the time, all 6 movies. And then, of course, there was the non-Star Wars Indiana Jones 4 coin, only given out at Star Wars Convention and San Diego Comic-Con. That makes sense for an Indiana Jones coin and a Star Wars convention. Well, Lucasfilm, I guess. But it's considered one of the parts of the collection. The other time coins were added to the modern toy line is the one we're doing a video on today. See, look at how all that was background, but it was important background. Because otherwise you wouldn't understand why are these figures from Power of the Force 2 era, 1995 through 98, 99. Well, why coins? One, it made them just different enough that fans like me would buy characters they already own. But now to get a coin! And while it's easy to see this as, well, an easy cash grab for management, oh, we can reissue the same figure, just throw in a coin, well, a lot of thought did go into it. And if you put yourself in their shoes, they were trying to expand the retail planogram. And by having other packaged price point items, that is possible. So hence the Millennium Minted Coin Collection. So we'll go through all figures in it. Did come out in 2 waves. The first one was led by Han Solo, and the second wave by the Emperor and the Snowtrooper, but we'll review all of them together because, well, it's a set. It's a special limited edition set. Where have we seen that before? Only like on everything ever with Star Wars. So Bespin Han, a re-release of the single-carded version, but this time he got the difference in that his gun has a silver barrel. It's the very first time and only time in Power of the Force 2 where Han's blaster's barrel gets a paint app. There were later figures of Han with later molds of the gun, but only in Power of the Force 2. There's also, of course, the Hands of Blue variant, where, yeah, you can see it there on the left. For some reason, a small batch of early samples came out, and Han had a blue-silver hand. I don't know if it's a cyborg hand to replace his real hand or whatever, but it's kind of a legitimate variant, so yeah, they call it the Blue Hand Han, maybe because of alliteration. Our next two figures are a bit of a pair, Luke and Leia, not just because they're sister and brother, and also Skywalker twins and all of that jazz, but, well, they originally both came with a bike, and this time they came with a coin, because it's the Millennium Minted Coin collection. But both figures are significantly different from the previous version packed out with the speeder bike that it's worth noting. So the speeder bike, Luke and Leia and Endor gear, was at that mid-price point of $9.99 to, upsell you from a basic figure. Worked great, and a lot of different SKUs offered with this. The Luke and the Leia had knees that could bend. So the new version, the one on the left, is the Millennium Minted Coin. The one on the right is the one with the speeder bike. Thanks to Rebel Scum for the great images. Always check out their photo archive. It's the best. Same thing with Leia. So her original figure that was in the box with the speeder bike had bending knees on a simple T-joint, and the new version did not. And much like Luke, a little tighter, smaller, better paint apps, more paint apps on the cloak for both of them. All right, next up we have the Emperor, and yeah, another character that gets released every couple of years. Sometimes takes a little bit too long between iterations of a major villain from the Star Wars franchise. So what did the Millennium Minted Coin one do? Well, the Emperor does three things. He walks, he shoots force lightning, and he sits around on a throne. So basically, you want an Emperor Palpatine that's going to do all three of these things, and it's hard to do that. It can be done at 6-inch because of piece count and price point. You can do a deluxe figure with a chair and all that. It's a little harder to pull it off at 3 3/4. I mean, it's been done. There has been Palpatines that have come with chairs, Palpatines without chairs, but including all of the head variants and the lightning and the arms and all that, now you've got like a super deluxe price point, which tends to be tough to do at 3 3/4. But you can cover a lot of the different necessary poses with multiple Palpatines. So the very first Palpatine we got, the Emperor from Power of the Force 2, is standing. And then, of course, there's the Clone Emperor, but I guess the less said about that, the better. And then we had Lightning Shooting Palpatine. So while Lightning Shooting Palpatine was done as a single-carded figure in that final wave of Power of the Force 2, before Power of the Jedi, there was a light-up electronic version of Palpatine that was lightning shooting that came out during Power of the Force 2. And this is the figure that got updated or put into the Millennium Minted Coin. So you can see the light-up version on the right, you can see the lights coming out of his hand, and then a slight retool of the figure for the Millennium Minted Coin version, no longer needing that backpack, or rather part of the cloak where the batteries would go in, which is why he's a little bit heftier there. All right, that now brings us to the Snow Trooper as we round out figures with very little change and a lot of change with the ones we have left. We've got 3 left to go. So Snow Trooper here is one of the ones with very little change. There were 2 versions from Power of the Force 2 done. The Deluxe Stormtrooper was the first at market, which came with an E-Web cannon, now made famous again in The Mandalorian season finale of Season 1. And then we got a carded version about a few months later. And the carded version is the one that gets the updated paint job. So the updated paint on the left, original carded on the right. Again, credit to Rebel Scum for the photo archive of all the figures. So yeah, straight up repaint, a little dirtier. It's always good to have variants in your snowtroopers. But other than that and the coin, not much difference. There was the Stormtrooper showing up in its package, which I don't know if this is people returning figures, if this was a legitimate variant. I've heard both stories. Either way, it's an error. All right, that brings us to C-3PO, which, much like Luke and Leia, had some significant changes, though you might not recognize them as much as you can, noting Luke and Leia have all new legs and much better paint on their ponchos. So the first C-3PO in Power of the Force 2 was the single-carded one from Wave 1, where he got the buffed-up look. Yes, even a droid apparently can be buffed up. And then a new version came out in the first redo wave, which also included a redo of Luke and Leia and R2. And, a much improved 3PO, and got his arms and legs removable. There was also the purchase of the droid C-3PO, which came out in a cinema scene. Both of these figures were actually combined. So the Millennium Minted Coin figure has the upper torso of the single-carded Power of the Force 2 removable limb 3PO, and then the bottom legs of Power of the Purchase of the Droids. All right, Chewbacca. Chewbacca caps us off, and honestly, not really going out with a bang, but a whimper. Chewbacca is just a straight-up repaint and one of the least repainted. It's hard to do variants of Chewbacca. I mean, there's like, Hoth Chewbacca, and he does have different hair in Jedi, and of course there's the Snuva disguise Chewbacca, but again, the less said about that, the better. In the Death Star Escape 3-pack, we got one that had slightly different arms that were just pointed inward for the binders, but otherwise it was your same Chewbacca that you just got on a basic card. And the one for Millennium Minted Coin all the way on the left, just a different paint job, a little tighter, a little better than the original release that's in the middle, and the box set on the far right. But hey, when you try to be different, sometimes you got to be just different enough that collectors have to buy the same thing multiple times. But at least we got coins.